Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for Wight, welcoming you to this week's Talking News. This week obviously has brought lots more announcements from the government regarding coronavirus restrictions which are in place. You are now required to wear a face mask when you're out in public. This is the easiest, simplest thing to think. There are a few restrictions and exceptions, but if you wear a face mask when out in public, you won't go wrong. You're also required to prove that you've been double vaccinated to get into certain evening venues. If you're ever in doubt, please just ask somebody at the venue and they will be able to help. There are, of course, further restrictions with regard to travel. To enter most countries, you must provide a negative PCR test before you travel, and to return to the UK, you must provide a negative PCR test before you enter the UK and again on day 2. This will obviously have affected people's travel plans over Christmas if they were going abroad, but we all must stay safe and we must adhere to the government guidelines. We are due to close the offices on Friday the 17th of December for a 2-week well-earned break for all staff and volunteers. It is really important that everybody gets a break in order to be able to come back in the new year revitalised and ready to look at 2022. Please, everybody, stay safe. With kindest wishes. Very Merry Christmas, Lisa.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. COVID-19. Boris Johnson announces Plan B restrictions to combat spread of Omicron variant. Boris Johnson has toughened coronavirus measures in England amid concern over the increasing spread of the Omicron variant. Speaking at a Downing Street news conference on Wednesday evening, the Prime Minister announced the measures in the government's Plan B. Mr. Johnson said it had become increasingly clear that Omicron is growing much faster than the previous Delta variant and was spreading rapidly all around the world. He added it was the proportionate and the responsible thing to introduce stronger COVID restrictions. The new COVID measures in England announced by the Prime Minister included the reintroduction of the work from home order for those who can from Monday, the extension of mandatory face mask wearing to most public indoor venues, including theatres and cinemas. However, there will be exemptions where it is not practical, such as when eating, drinking, exercising or singing. The NHS COVID Pass, commonly referred to as a vaccine passport, will be made mandatory in a week's time for nightclubs and large events. Earlier on Wednesday, it was revealed that another 131 cases of Omicron, which is feared to be more transmissible than the Delta variant, had been recorded across the UK, taking the total to 568. It marks the second day in a row that more than 100 cases of the new variant have been reported. The UK has also recorded 51,342 new COVID cases in the last 24 hours, and a further 161 people have died within 28 days of testing positive for coronavirus. Mr. Johnson made the announcement of fresh COVID measures as he deals with a furious row over an alleged Christmas party in 10 Downing Street last December, when strict coronavirus rules were in place. Amid the scandal, the Prime Minister has faced the charge he is implementing stronger COVID measures as a diversionary tactic. In a document published in September, the government's Plan B for dealing with winter measures in the NHS stated that contingency measures to deal with COVID-19 would include a strengthening of government messaging, the possible introduction of COVID vaccine passports for some events, mandatory face mask wearing, and a return to work from home guidance. Mr. Johnson had already reintroduced mandatory face mask wearing on public transport and in shops, as well as other settings in England, following the discovery of the Omicron variant last month. He has also recently toughened travel restrictions and put a number of African countries on the travel red list.
This is Chris. reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Faces of Isle of Wight and Hampshire's Most Wanted revealed. Crime Stoppers has launched its first ever Most Wanted campaign to include the Isle of Wight. A digital ad van display, which could be seen at St Thomas's Square and in Morrison's car park on December the 8th, featured the faces of 27 wanted individuals. Among those wanted are Samuel Woodford, who committed assault in Newport, and Matthew Shipman, who is wanted for his role in a freshwater burglary. The charity's UK's Most Wanted campaign, launched in 2005, has led to more than 4,300 arrests to date. Those with information can contact Crime Stoppers anonymously on 0800 555 111 or complete a simple and secure anonymous online form at crimestoppers-uk.org. Emily van der Lely, Regional Manager at Crime Stoppers, said, "This is the first time we have facilitated Most Wanted on the Isle of Wight, and I look forward to increasing awareness and publicising wanted individuals." Donna Jones, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Police and Crime Commissioner, added, "I am pleased to support the Crime Stoppers Hampshire and Isle of Wight Most Wanted campaign. Anyone with information can report it to Hampshire Constabulary by calling 101 or the charity's website."
This is an article from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Terry. Isle of Wight remains Omicron-free, but Southampton and Portsmouth record cases. The Isle of Wight is still free of Omicron COVID cases, despite nearby Portsmouth and Southampton having confirmed cases. 4 cases of the variant were confirmed in Southampton on Monday, while 3 were found in Basingstoke over the weekend, and Portsmouth City Council recorded its first Omicron case. An Isle of Wight Council spokesperson has said they are not aware of any confirmed Omicron cases on the island, but urged people to get vaccinated or have their booster vaccine if eligible. Southampton's Public Health Director, Debbie Chase, said it is working with the UK Health Security Agency, that's UKHSA, following the discoveries, but added the cases were all directly or indirectly linked to travel from overseas. Latest data from the UKSHA shows 437 Omicron cases have now been confirmed in the UK, with 333 in England. Speaking at a meeting of the Isle of Wight Council's Local Outbreak Engagement Board last week, Simon Bryant, the island's Public Health Director, said initial signs were it could be okay, but wants to remain very cautious.
Network Ride celebrates Duke of Edinburgh's award success, from Island Echo, read by Elaine. Network Ride Town Council's youth service, has successfully presented 22 awards to their young people who have completed their Bronze and Silver Duke of Edinburgh awards. The awards ceremony took place at Ride Academy on Thursday the 25th of November and was attended by proud parents, teachers, friends, family and professionals. The High Sheriff of the Isle of Wight, James Attrell, presented 20 bronze and 2 silver awards. Ride's Mayor, Michael Lilly, closed the evening by congratulating all the young people. Network Ride has worked hard to support local young people to achieve their Duke of Edinburgh awards, which has been more challenging than usual due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The award is in different sections: skills, voluntary, physical and expedition. The young people can choose their sections and have to evidence their journey with pictures and written accounts which are uploaded to DOV and assessed to ensure that they have met their goals. The last section is the expedition. They first plan a practice route and then plan an assessed expedition to complete their award. The bronze award is 2 days, 1 night, and the silver award is 3 days, 2 nights. Before the expeditions, the young people plan their walking routes, learn map reading skills and how to put up a tent, and they also learn about what food to bring and how to successfully pack a rucksack. Network Ride's Phil Becks and Joe attended all the expeditions over the summer and even camped at the end of October. During the award ceremony, the young people had the opportunity to share short presentations in their groups of their expedition experiences. They talked about their exhibition aims, such as looking for local flora and fauna, and shared pictures of their time walking and camping. This was a fantastic opportunity for the guests at the ceremony to see the behind-the-scenes moments which were full of wonderful and funny memories which the young people will remember fondly for the rest of their lives. Rebecca Swan, Network Ride's Youth Work Manager, comments, "We are exceptionally proud of all of our young people who have achieved their awards in the most difficult of circumstances. COVID-19 has meant that some sections have had to be changed or adapted to fit in with the guidelines, and also meant the exhibition section was delayed. However, it was an amazing experience for all the young people who achieved their awards." Bronze awards were presented to Jack Budden, Jake McCartney, Jack Hamilton, Ella Brooks Pepper, Lily Getty Evans, Charlotte Fancourt, Pip Johnson, Rosie Johnson, Blake Cotton, Millie Hughes, Talitha Monaghan, Sarah Witherington, James Nettleton, Amber Hunt, Tom Parsons, Sian Evans, Rhys Mundale, Dan Orme, Lily Meredith and Alex Kesey. Silver awards were presented to Lily Meredith and Dan Orme.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Isle of Wight men jailed for animalistic violent ventnor offences. 2 men have been jailed for violent offences on the Isle of Wight. Nino Kavanagh, 28, along with 21-year-old Lewis Moreira Morgan, were sentenced at the Isle of Wight Crown Court on Tuesday the 7th. The pair had been charged in connection with an incident which took place at an address in Albert Street, Ventnor, on the 20th of June this year. A 43-year-old man, who was known to Kavanagh and Moreira Morgan, was assaulted by Moreira Morgan at the address, resulting in him being admitted to hospital with serious injuries to his head and face, including fractured eye sockets and perforated eardrums. During this incident, Kavanagh stole some of the man's personal belongings. At a previous court hearing, Kavanagh admitted theft and Moreira Morgan pleaded guilty to causing grievous bodily harm. In a separate incident, on July the 29th this year, police attended an address on Lowtherville Road in Ventnor to conduct a search. Kavanagh and Moreira Morgan, who were inside the address at the time, climbed up onto the roof and started shouting abuse at police. Kavanagh threw concrete blocks at police, and over the course of 3 hours, both defendants continued to break bits of material off the roof to throw at officers. A car parked near the address sustained damage as a result of being struck by missiles thrown by the 2 defendants. They were eventually arrested and charged with affray and criminal damage, which they both admitted at a previous court hearing. Kavanagh of Kestrel Way in Carisbrooke was jailed for 18 months. Moreira Morgan of Trinity Road in Ventnor was jailed for 23 months. Following the sentencing, DC Ross Jones said, "These were violent offences which saw a man hospitalised with serious injuries, and also saw the safety of police officers put at significant risk by the defendant's animalistic behaviour. There is simply no place in society for this kind of behaviour, and I'm pleased that the work of all officers involved in investigating these incidents has now resulted in both men being put in prison where they rightly belong.
This is Chris reading an article from the Island Echo. Smallbrook's scheme to see Ashy Road close for 5 days, but other roads will reopen. A section of Ashy Road in Ryde is set to be closed next week to accommodate the ongoing safety improvement work at Smallbrook Roundabout. But it means that Carter's Road and Smallbrook Lane will reopen in both directions. For the past few weeks, utility companies have been redirecting their services so the new roundabout layout can be built next year. One element of this utility work requires the diversion of BT Openreach infrastructure. This work will require the closure of Ashy Road between Smallbrook Junction and the junction of Upton Road and Swanmore Road from Monday morning the 13th of December until Friday the 17th of December. The diversion in both directions will be via Upton Road and Carter's Road. Both Smallbrook Lane and Carter's Road will be reopened in both directions to facilitate the diversion. There will also be 3-way traffic lights at Smallbrook Junction. On completion of the work, Smallbrook Lane and Carter's Road will revert to one-way west to east, eastbound, for the ongoing construction works, which are set to last until April 2022. Dave Marsh, Island Road's design manager, says, "We had hoped BT could undertake this work with just one lane of Ashy Road closed, but more detailed investigation has shown the infrastructure is not quite where they had it mapped. While this means the whole section of Ashy Road between the roundabout and the Upton Road Swanmore Road junction will be closed, opening up Smallbrook Lane and Carter's Road to 2-way traffic once more should lessen the impact of the closure. This is a very complex scheme involving work from all the main utility companies, and I would like to thank them all for their cooperation. We have all worked closely together to limit the impact on road users. This cooperation has meant that, despite some challenges, we have kept the project to the original timetable. That said, we realise that the work has inevitably had some local impact, and we would like to thank residents too for their patience. We know this junction requires improvement and look forward to the unveiling the new layout and other safety features, including anti-skid surfacing, better lighting and a reduced speed limit early in April 2022. Island Road's plans to remove all traffic restrictions over the Christmas holiday between the 24th of December and the 4th of January, if it's safe to do so.
This is an article from On the Wight, read by Terry. Isle of Wight gets new fleet of state-of-the-art refuse lorries. The new fleet of state-of-the-art refuse lorries are fitted with quieter bin lift technology and enhanced safety systems. General rubbish and food collections are going greener and cleaner with the arrival of a new fleet of state-of-the-art refuse lorries. Boasting enhanced engine efficiency and greater safety for pedestrians and other road users, the 7 vehicles represent a £1.4 million investment into the island's waste collection service by the Isle of Wight Council and its waste contractor, Amy. Councillor Jonathan Bacon, Cabinet Member for the Environment and Waste Services, said, "Our hard-working crews do a great job as part of our effort to keep the island's streets clean. but they need the best tools possible in order to do this. The refresh of our fleet will improve the reliability of the collection rounds, while at the same time helping towards our wider environmental ambitions by being cleaner and more efficient than the older vehicles they replace. As a council, we are always looking for ways to improve the services we offer to our residents. We are currently considering a number of potential options and proposals. One of these is a provision to be able to collect batteries and small electrical items. We would be interested to know if the public would welcome this as part of the waste collection service. Each lorry is fitted with quieter bin lift technology and enhanced safety systems, including flashing warning signs and an audio warning before the vehicle turns left. They also come equipped with CCTV cameras and a system which alerts the driver to any objects that cross the vehicle's path when reversing. The fleet will work alongside the existing Mercedes recycling collection lorries, which entered service in 2016. As with the recycling vehicles, the new refuse lorries feature a separate food collection pod where the contents of food caddies are placed. Food waste is sent to a specialist plant where it is used to generate electricity and produce nutrient-rich farmland fertiliser. Indoor and outdoor food caddies are available for free to households. To request one, call 01983 823 777 or order one via the website. The vehicles began service this week ahead of the festive season. Unlike recent years, there are no changes to household collections over Christmas due to Christmas Day falling on a weekend. Linbottom and Afton Marsh recycling centres will close on Christmas Day only and will otherwise be open as normal. Between Monday the 20th of December and Friday the 14th of January, residents can leave excess polystyrene out in clear or white sacks only, next to their black bin or gull sack.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Charity concert to honour Isle of Wight's beloved John Hannam. A night of live music will pay homage to legendary Isle of Wight journalist and broadcaster John Hannam. John, who was best known for his many years on Isle of Wight Radio and his monthly showbiz feature in Beacon magazine, died in September, aged 80. His son Sean is staging a concert at Shanklin Theatre to honour his memory and raise money for charity. Sean said, "Shanklin Theatre was a venue that my dad was very fond of. It's where we held the wake for his funeral in November, so it's very fitting that the tribute concert will take place there." As a nod to the Showbiz TV series, Sunday Night at the London Palladium, I've called the concert Sunday Night at Shanklin Theatre, a tribute to John Hannam. The lineup of performers will include national and local musicians who Dad liked, admired and supported, most of whom he interviewed at some stage during his career. Among those featuring at the concert will be British husband and wife country duo My Darling Clementine and singer-songwriter Matt James, the former drummer of 90s anthemic indie rockers Gene. The full lineup of acts are as follows: My Darling Clementine, Matt James, Gene, Andy Strickland, The Loft, The Caretaker Race, The Chesterfields, Matt Hill, Brian Sharp, Bobby I Can Fly, Chris Clark, Amy Bird, Bob and Bertie Everson. Tickets can be bought from Shanklin Theatre's website. Proceeds will go to the British Heart Foundation and St Mary's Hospital's Wellow Ward, where John was cared for.
This is Chris reading an article from the Island Echo. Royal Navy sailor from the Isle of Wight returning home in time for Christmas. An Isle of Wight sailor who has spent over 7 months at sea on board the aircraft carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth will return home on Thursday the 9th of December, just in time for Christmas with his family. Leading engineering technician Gregory Hattersley, 33, has been to the other side of the world and back as part of the Royal Navy's largest operational deployment in a generation. HMS Queen Elizabeth left Portsmouth as part of the United Kingdom's carrier strike group back in May. Since then, the strike group have sailed nearly 48,000 nautical miles from the Atlantic Ocean, through the Mediterranean, across the Indian Ocean, into the Pacific and back again. Leading engineering technician Hattersley, who grew up in Haven Street and attended Medina High School, is now an engineer with the cyber and IT team on the ship, maintaining and managing the IS system on board. Over the past 7 months, he has played a role in HMS Queen Elizabeth's operations, which have included launching the first F-35 sorties from the Mediterranean into the Black Sea, while also sending jets east into Iraq and Syria on 6 to 7 hour missions in support of Op Shader and responding to Russian air incursions. Gregory says, "I really enjoyed the fact that there is something new to learn every day. With IS, there is never a set answer to problems, and the experience of meeting and talking to a range of people every day, from contractors to ship's company, helps to bring a new dynamic to each day. I am also the welfare rep for the largest mess on board, and making sure they are well represented is something I find rewarding. I was inspired to join the Royal Navy by my dad, who served 22 years and then another 23 in the Royal Fleet Auxiliary. My first deployment was with HMS Dauntless in 2014, which took the ship out to the Gulf, visiting Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Kuwait and Bahrain, with a stop in Mallorca on the return leg. I have served in HMS Queen Elizabeth since she was being built and sailed with her each time the ship put to sea. Gregory is now looking forward to having some family time at Christmas at home in Cowes, probably at the Pontoon View pub, where his father-in-law is the landlord. He adds, "When I get back home, I'm looking forward to spending as much time as possible with my wife and daughter and making the most of the time I have at home with them. For Christmas, I'm looking forward to seeing my parents and my wife's parents and enjoying opening presents as a family, having the best day possible together." HMS Queen Elizabeth is expected to sail into Portsmouth on the afternoon of the 9th of December at approximately 15:20.
This is an article from the Island Echo, read by Terry. CCTV image of convicted burglar wanted for new crimes in Freshwater released. Police have issued CCTV footage of 43-year-old Michael Shipman, also known as Matthew Duffield, who is wanted in connection with a number of burglaries on the Isle of Wight. Shipman Duffield was sentenced to 4 years and 6 months in prison back in 2016 after being found guilty of robbing elderly pensioners in Bath in November 2014. Now, 5 years after being sent down, the 43-year-old's photo has been released by Hampshire Police as they hunt him for alleged crimes on the Isle of Wight. Police have been investigating reports of Nottingham knockers attending people's addresses and stealing from them. On the 1st of August this year, a man entered the home address of a woman in her 90s from Freshwater, left some household items in her home, and then took money from her purse whilst she lay in bed. The same woman was targeted again on 25th of November during a similar incident in which money was again taken. As part of this investigation, Hampshire Constabulary would like to locate and speak with Matthew Shipman. He also goes under a number of aliases, including Robert Wilson, Matthew Duffield, Matthew Harvey, Terence King and Andrew Shipman. He is described as white, approximately 5'11" tall, medium build, with very short brown hair and hazel eyes. If you see him, dial 999 immediately. If you have been affected by this type of crime and haven't yet reported it to police, or have information about the incidents referenced in the above appeal, call police immediately on 101, quoting 44210305 357. I'll repeat that. Call the police immediately on 101, quoting 44210305 357. Or you can contact them on their website.
Isle of Wight Skills Plan will arm a new generation of islanders with skills needed to drive industries of tomorrow, from On the Wight, read by Elaine. The plan will provide a framework for local employers and educators to help make sure training and education are matched to the skills demands of local industries and sectors. An action plan to arm a new generation of islanders with the skills needed to drive the industries of tomorrow looks set to be agreed by the Isle of Wight Council next week. The Isle of Wight Skills Plan sets out a clear roadmap for equipping people with the skills they need to support economic growth across the island in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. The plan will provide a framework for local employers and educators to help make sure training and the education are matched to the skills and demands of local industries and sectors. A Cabinet report to go before councillors next Thursday, the 16th of December, also recommends setting up a skills board, including representation from key stakeholders to oversee the plan and ensure a coordinated approach. Councillor Julie Jones-Evans, Cabinet Member for Regeneration, said the future for a prosperous island was dependent on people having the relevant skills to both encourage inward investment and enable local businesses to thrive. She said, "Our regeneration strategy sets out our ambition to make the island a great place to grow up, live, work and visit, and central to this is the need to ensure we have the skills and education available to meet the current and future skills needs of all sectors. This means working together with employers and educators to help them to identify and address some of the key challenges that stand in the way of this ambition." The Isle of Wight Skills Plan suggests a series of priorities and actions to help grow the skill base of the island, give young people high-quality career opportunities, and help adults to train and upskill throughout their working lives. Raising the median wage on the island is a key priority. Against a backdrop of increased youth unemployment due to COVID and a high demand for staff in key sectors such as care and hospitality, the report recognises the importance of addressing the skills mismatch across the jobs market. There are already many successful programmes operating across the island to promote skills and employability and to support vulnerable young people and adults at risk of social and economic exclusion, and these are all also highlighted in the report. Councillor Debbie Andre, Cabinet Member for Education and Lifelong Skills, said the Council had a key role to play in working as an intermediary between education providers in the public and private sectors and island businesses. She said, We identified a need to draw up a skills plan that accurately brought together the range of organisations engaged and active in this area to avoid the risk of duplication and gaps in provision, and to match the demand for the particular skill sets needed. In establishing a skills board, we will create a strong mechanism in order to achieve this. In addition, the plan seeks to ensure we have the skills in our workforce not only to meet the challenges of our traditionally important sectors such as tourism, hospitality and care, but also to provide the foundation for new opportunities in the growing green economy and high-value businesses such as information technology and the knowledge economy in general. Read the Cabinet report in full on the Isle of Wight Council website.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Motorists who pay at pump in Morrison's alerted to new £99 charge, worried that people may be left in their overdraft in the run-up to Christmas, and Island Echo reader is warning fellow motorists about a new £99 fuel charge at Morrison's on the Isle of Wight. Drivers who use the popular pay-at-pump facilities at stores in Lake and Newport are now finding that they have a bumper £99 deducted from their bank account balance no matter how much fuel they actually put in. The money is ring-fenced when purchasing petrol and diesel at the pump as part of the pre-authorisation process. Previously, £1 would be held from a driver's bank account, with the actual charge being deducted a few days later. Now, £99, the maximum amount of fuel that can be delivered from a pump, is being earmarked to ensure that forecourts aren't left out of pocket. It is aimed at stopping those with insufficient funds from brimming the tank without the means to pay for it. On the flip side, it is hoped that customers will be able to better plan their finances, as they won't forget about the pending fuel transaction, which used to show as just £1. It's said that the ring-fenced amount should be cleared within the hour, with the actual fuel cost deducted from the cardholder's bank account. But many people up and down the country say this doesn't always happen, and it can be several days until the money is available again. Earlier this year, it was announced that Tesco, Morrison's, Asda and Sainsbury's would be making the change from £1 to £99. A concerned reader has said, "There are no signs or anything to suggest that £99 will be taken. When I phoned Morrison's and spoke to them, they said that was standard. I'm concerned that people will be thrown into their overdraft unexpectedly and may be charged for this. It's a silly time of the year to introduce such a change when people are struggling to save for Christmas."
This is Chris reading an article from the Island Echo. Eton College withdraw housing application for homes on Seaview's Donkeyfield. Eton College has withdrawn its housing application on the Isle of Wight, extending the future of a green corridor in Seaview. It follows the Isle of Wight Council's refusal of another housing application on the field above, stopping a potential 17 houses from being built. Oliver Bolter, the Council's Strategic Manager for Planning and Infrastructure, confirmed Eton's application for 9 houses on the locally beloved Donkeyfield was withdrawn at the request of planning agents, Fowler Architecture and Planning, last week. A spokesperson from Headland Consultancy on behalf of the college declined to comment. The application had received more than 150 objections since it was submitted, including from Isle of Wight MP Bob Seeley and Nettleston and Seaview Parish Council, expressing concerns about greenfield development and access to the site. It was primarily issues with access, which would be via Seagrove Manor Road and Seagrove Farm Road, that caused an application for 8 houses on land at Seagrove Farm Road, the field above, to be refused. The developments would have shared the same access road, leading from one to the other. Nettleston and Seaview Parish Council said in its objection the 2 developments would triple the traffic movements on Seagrove Manor Road, which was already very narrow and difficult to negotiate. Island Roads had recommended refusal to both developments on that basis, with the access to the development called unsatisfactory with unacceptable visibility and width. While the future of Eaton's application is unknown, the applicants for other 8 houses can, if they wish, appeal the decision to the Planning Inspectorate. In the decision notice, however, Mr. Bolter said the application was not considered to be a sustainable form of development, and while pre-application advice has been sought, with further information submitted, it did not overcome planning concerns.
This is an article from the Island Echo, read by Terry. Seaview man rolled mini digger into ditch whilst more than 3 times the drink drive limit. A Seaview man who crashed his employer's mini digger into a ditch after consuming a bottle and a half of wine has been banned from driving for 29 months. Dean Brett, 45, of Priory Drive, appeared before the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Tuesday, charged with drink driving on the 22nd of November this year. Anne Smout, prosecuting, explained to the bench that at midnight, a member of the public alerted police to the discovery of a male slumped behind the controls of a mini-digger on Priory Road. Officers attended the scene and found the tracked vehicle in a ditch with the engine running. They had to remove Brett by force, arresting him for failing to provide a sample. Mrs. Smout went on to say that Brett later cooperated with officers at the police station and gave a breathalyzer reading of 126, 3.5 times the drink drive limit. The court heard that Brett, a full-time ground worker, had borrowed a JCB compact excavator from his employer, Reynolds and Reed. Depressed over the breakdown of his relationship and his children going home to their mother, he decided to go to a nearby field he owned to get some space. Whilst there, he consumed a bottle and a half of wine before starting up the digger. Thinking the road was private, Dean Brett moved the digger down the lane ready for the next morning, but misjudged his position and rolled the digger into a ditch at the side of the carriageway. Barry Arnett, defending, said that his client was remorseful for his actions. Mr. Arnett also told the court that his client had been on antidepressants for some time. Magistrates handed Brett a 29-month driving disqualification and made him subject to a 12-month community order with 100 hours of unpaid work. He was also ordered to pay £85 costs with a £95 surcharge.
Society News. The swimming group at Medina will meet on Monday at Medina Leisure Centre between 1:30 and 2:30 p.m. for the last time this year. The group has exclusive use of the pool and are looking for new members to join in the new year. The cost is £5 for swimming. Transport is available if requested. Please call the office for more information. There will be no coffee and chat on Wednesday at Millbrook House. Our Thursday, our Mix and Mingle group enjoyed their Christmas dinner at Aptly Manor. 35 members, volunteers and staff enjoyed the festivities and had a thoroughly enjoyable time. Our annual story writing award ceremony was held virtually on Monday evening. Congratulations to all our winners in each category. You are still able to watch it via YouTube or on our website, and we will be playing it over the Christmas period. Please don't forget our annual raffle. It will be drawn on Monday at 2 p.m, but you can still purchase tickets up until midday, so please call the office and be in with a chance of winning one of our fabulous prizes. The newsletter will be posted out this Friday, so you have plenty to browse over the festive season. Please share it with friends and family. This includes 2022 dates for your diary. The office will close on Friday at 3 p.m. for the Christmas break and reopen on Tuesday the 4th of January at 9 a.m. We wish you a very happy Christmas and a peaceful New Year from all of us at Sight for Wight.
Hello, this is Sonara.
And this is Kate.
And we're reading the second session of the Talking News. And we first start with letters to the editor. And the one here by Robert Swinton of Ventnor. Energy Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng, who visited villages in County Durham 11 days after Storm Arwen left thousands of families in northern England and Scotland without any power, looked totally bemused and out of his depth. The expression on his face was a picture, as it clearly appeared to dawn on him that under the Conservative government, energy companies had been allowed to squirrel away profits in the direction of shareholders rather than investing in maintaining the infrastructure, something we islanders are all too familiar with Southern Water's antics. But let's not worry too much. We can always say we are building back better, in the hope of being re-elected. Wouldn't you say, Mr. Seeley?
Nigel Anderson of Newport says, Tory Christmas bash? Is it one rule for them and another law for us? Boris Johnson's stunt of dressing up as a policeman and bastion of law and order is nauseating when criminality would appear to exist much closer to home, with Number 10's widely reported alleged law-breaking Christmas party during last year's lockdown. Will the Metropolitan Police be investigating and bringing charges? Will those who were fined £10,000 for similar transgressions be having their criminal sentences quashed and fines refunded? Or is it one rule for the Conservative Party leadership and another rule for everyone else, with Cressida Dick having the Conservative Party's back by publicly saying the Metropolitan Police will not be investigating? What are the implications for democracy if we have a government increasingly mired in lies, sleaze and criminality, with the police force complicit in protecting Conservatives' alleged wrongdoing?
And we have a rotten rhyme sent in from Glyn Brasington of Bembridge. The Brown list brings a sad twist to this old limerick. There was a young fellow from Ryde who went for a swim at high tide. His sister next day went in the same way, and now they're interred side by side.
Omicron worries. Alan Neil of Freshwater says, having allowed passengers to freely enter and mix with the public for several days after realising Omicron was a COVID mutation of concern and putting 6 South African countries on the red list, we're now told by Savid Javid that Omicron is spreading freely throughout the UK. Could those supposedly in charge of this country and pandemic be any more incompetent?
Burying heads, sent in by Peter Shreve, Isle of Wight Assistant District Secretary of the National Education Union. Ostriches don't bury their heads in the sand without good reason, so why should government? Masks are mandatory since November 30th in crowded indoor areas, such as supermarkets and public transport, yet not in cinemas or theatres. For over 20 months, expectations in medical facilities have been robust. Entry denied to all without a mask, except those exempt. Those supporting loved ones have mostly been denied entry. In veterinary practices, staff collect pets from the car park. Owners wait in cars. Education guidance was updated this month. In secondary schools, government recommends masks for all when moving around the premises. In primary schools, it only applies to adults. Inadequate, considering infection rates in children are stubbornly high. Those in early years education are rising most rapidly, yet mitigations are not. COVID relies on airborne transmission. School children go home to families and transmit. After 20 months, many staff fail to understand why even more isn't being done to improve ventilation and air filtration in all schools. This week, numbers were limited at a school consultation meeting. Attendees had to wear a mask, social distance, and register, and take a lateral flow test in advance. In the coming week, there is another meeting, scheduled in Chillerton, with attendees limited to 21. All perfectly understandable, yet arguably inequitable when compared with measures in education. More robust school mitigations are still needed if schools are to keep pupils learning. Sir Jeremy Farrar, director of the Wellcome Trust and until recently a government scientific advisor, said, "We are closer to the start of the pandemic than the end." He regretted the lack of political leadership over COVID. This is where any government similarity to ostriches ends. Ostriches aren't stupid enough to bury their heads in the sand. In reality, acting as good parents, lowering heads to be camouflaged, protecting children when faced with danger. Leaders aren't ostriches. They need to communicate better and do more to protect school children, staff, and the country at large.
Anthrax Death. Tony Barton of Friends of Newport and Carisbrooke Cemeteries read the article of Wight Memories in the County Press 3rd of December. He says Alan Stroud's account of the death from anthrax of Charlie Matthews in 1925 brings to mind the death from anthrax of another employee of the same company, although ownership does appear to have changed in 1931. George Maurice Sprague, aged 18, of Beach Road, Newport, also worked for the Isle of Wight Hair Company, engaged in washing and drying horse and cattle hair from all over the world, like Charlie Matthews. The first sign of George's illness had been when he lost his appetite one Saturday, and he died the following Wednesday. The post-mortem identified anthrax following inhalation of airborne spores as the cause of death. Once again, the company claimed to have followed all regulations. The local doctor suggested that as this was the second local case, the regulations might need to be reviewed. However, the deputy coroner, the factory inspector and the employer considered that unnecessary. The representative for the employer suggested that the doctor himself could make his own representation to the Ministry of Health, and that was in the county press of the 26th of September 1931. George Maurice Sprague was buried in St Paul's Cemetery, Holbury Lane, Newport. One would hope that if there were two cases of such a rare infectious disease today, that the authorities would take up the issue and not leave it to a local GP.
We Won't Be Coming Back is written by Patricia Shaw of Preston, and a copy of this letter has been sent to the Isle of Wight Council and Sandown Town Council. We have just returned from our holiday in Sandown, where we stayed at the Bayshore Hotel. We last visited Sandown 10 years ago. Today, along the promenade, The buildings surrounding the dilapidated Ocean Hotel are all in a disgraceful state. This large portion of the promenade faces one of the best beaches on the island, and obviously no effort has been put in to improve the area. Money has clearly been spent in Shanklin, but Sandown seems to have been completely ignored. Others at our hotel commented on the state of the promenade too. Sorry, but we most certainly will not be returning to the island.
Desirable train routes identified, says Richard Ferraro of FRIBA, Bonchurch. As a postscript to my previous letter in the county press of the 26th of November 2021, your readers may not be familiar with the proposals for Isle of Wight railway extensions, for which a feasibility study was carried out last year. In summary, the feasibility work was done by London-based transport consultants. It was commissioned and supervised by Isle of Wight Council using money from Department for Transport's Restoring Your Railway Fund. The main objectives last year were to analyse options for railway extensions and establish a viable business case. 3 desirable railway projects were identified as follows. Phase 1, Sandown to Newport via Blackwater. Phase 2, Shanklin to Ventnor via Wroxall. Phase 3, Newport to Cowes via St Mary's Hospital. The analysis showed that phases 1 and 2 are easier to route. Phase 3 is tricky. Helpfully, phases 1 and 2 piggyback existing investments. That is, £26 million spent on the Island Line and £30 million committed for upgrade of Ryde Pier and Pier Head. To my knowledge, a bid for Phase 1 funding now sits with central government. On which basis I assume the Isle of Wight Council and MP Bob Seeley are pressing the Department of Transport for early progress. If implemented, the railway extensions will create fast connections between more towns across the island and reduce road traffic. They will also make Ryde Pier Head accessible to many more island residents for rapid connection to national rail and bus services at Portsmouth Harbour. An extended railway network also offers easy access into the island for visitors, commuters and businesses. As night follows day, new railways bring jobs and investment. For the time being, the restored Island Line, as it is now, needs 2 or preferably 3 trains per hour in both directions to establish a credible service. Of importance, Southern Railway's timetable for the Island Line must ensure efficient workable time slot connections with White Links catamarans at Ryde Pier Head. That is a must-have. To achieve this, if the new passing loop at Brading isn't essential, I expect it will come into its own later. The island needs more low-carbon, fast-moving, rail-based public transport. Right now there is much to play for.
A solution for the refugee crisis is sent by Ian Mackey, Totland Bay. Here we are in late 2021, and both the British and French governments are playing political tennis, blaming each other while scores of desperate migrants drown in the English Channel. The British government's position is that asylum should be sought in France, while the French government would rather pass the buck and let the migrants take their chance in rubber dinghies. Shamefully, the British position has been to make the passage so difficult that it would deter the migrants from risking their lives. A truly inhumane policy that increases the probability of death and suffering. It doesn't matter that some of these people may not be genuine asylum seekers. No one should have to take these risks. It does not matter that there are criminal gangs involved. That's an issue for the police forces of both countries. The appalling reality is that people are dying, and both governments have shown a complete lack of compassion. Time and again we're told of the British sense of fair play, and our willingness to help others. This is patent nonsense. We're sitting idly by and letting this happen. There is an alternative, and that is simply to create a safe and secure establishment on land in France and process asylum claims and share the cost of administration with the French. Once asylum is granted, then these refugees should be able to settle in the UK. For those who fail asylum tests, then they should be returned to their country of origin. Governments of both sides of the Channel have shown a huge propensity to spend billions of taxpayers' money on some fairly useless projects, yet seem utterly unwilling to fully fund and operate a safe haven for those fleeing tyranny. This is a genuine humanitarian crisis on our doorstep, and I struggle to find a more honourable way to spend public money than keeping people safe and alive.
We move on now to White Memories, which is talking about the waterside pool in Ryde, a decade on from the threat of closure. At the beginning of this month, Waterside Community Trust celebrated its 10th year of operation since the Isle of Wight Council threatened the centre at Ryde with closure. Built as an outdoor pool with the paddling pool and learner pool in 1974, the seafront facility was enclosed with its unique opening roof in 1994 as the last gasp of the old Medina Borough Council before its budget was absorbed by the creation of the Unitary Authority. Great plans for remodelling, with new changing rooms, a cafe and a gym, were explored in 2006-07, and Southampton-based architects FDG were commissioned to draw up plans. As a first step, 3 dual-fuel boilers were commissioned in 2009, but by 2010 its closure was announced. This was the fallout from the 2008 recession, and was at a time when local councils throughout the country were shedding non-essential services. Papers released at the time indicated that the pool was losing £200,000 per annum. Following a meeting organised by Ian and Leslie Ball, a petition was launched and within 4 weeks obtained several thousand signatures, more than enough to force a full debate by councillors. An action group followed and the closure was delayed to give the Waterside Community Trust time to set up as a non-for-profit company and bid to take the facility over. A rival approach came from a developer who had plans to build a hotel with what Leslie dismissively called a fluffy towel pool.
Todd Miller, one of the original trustees, said that when WCT, Waterside Community Trust, said that when they submitted its bid, they were advised they would receive approximately £100,000 in start-up subsidy when they took over in April 2011. There were procedural delays, so it was agreed the Isle of Wight Council would keep the pool open until they were ready to transfer ownership. Todd recalls, "We took over on December 1st, 2011, and were then told the £100,000 had been used up in running the facility from April to December. We only got £16,000, but Isle of Wight Council did fund a new filter and a fuel conversion to gas." A conversation between trustees at the time was, if we can keep it going for 6 months, we will have achieved something. Ryde Council, RTC, was supportive throughout and provided £40,000 per annum, which was a lifeline in those early years. As the Waterside Committee Trust became more successful, this annual grant was cut first to £30,000 and latterly to £20,000. To this day, Waterside relies heavily on the support of Ryde Town Council, as well as grants and fundraising to keep the centre open, and to continue to develop and improve its facilities. The original trustees were Ian Jenkins, Mark Haslam, Leslie Ball, Todd Miller, Chris Wren and Andrew Kurowski, while Conrad Gauntlet was the first Wight Town Council representative. Since 2011, Waterside Pool has grown in strength year on year, with fantastic community support as well as invaluable support from Wight Town Council. The centre is open 7 days a week, 50 weeks of the year. During the past 10 years, it has provided jobs for more than 200 people, trained up over 300 lifeguards, taught in excess of 20,000 local children to swim, and provided a community hub for locals with countless visitors over the past 10 years. The centre has also developed Ride Beach Lifeguards, which is a nationally recognised arm of the charity, focusing on training of lifeguards, as well as providing a beach lifeguard service for Ryde and Sandown beaches. The centre costs approximately £1,000 per day to run and wouldn't be open without support from the community.
Current trustees are Mark Haslam, Andrei Kurowski, Ian Jenkins, Keith Gentleman, Peter Taylor, Conrad Gauntlet, Malcolm Marshall and John Sands. There will be a proper celebration planned next summer, when the Waterside Community Trust hopes that COVID restrictions will have eased. The centre is always in need of support, so anyone wishing to offer help this Christmas can make a donation to the Community Trust's current project to raise funds for new starting blocks for use in group swimming lessons, and primarily by Ryde Swimming Club, whose members swim at the centre. Todd concluded, going back to the early conversation between trustees, they are elated to see the centre still open 10 years later. But all the trustees have volunteered huge amounts of their time over the years to support the centre, and without them, the centre certainly wouldn't be open.
And on to My View, where a panel of columnists take it in turn to give their take on life as it's played out on the Isle of Wight. This one written by Rebecca Roncoroni. Technology can't beat the personal touch. The irony in these days, when it's possible to communicate 24 hours a day via small handheld devices and thin tablets, is that people have never been less aware of what is going on in their towns and villages, while their families have grown and flown far and wide, safe in the knowledge that there is always FaceTime or Zoom. The above springs from the fact that without local shops, schools, doctors, dentists, cafes, churches, playgroups, community centres or parks, people don't meet each other anymore. People don't bump into each other, stop and have a natter. Keepsakes such as wedding invitations, congratulations, postcards, love letters, birthday cards, thank you notes, good luck cards, etc., are slowly going digital. You can't keep them in a shoebox for future generations. GPs are coming under fire for not seeing enough people face to face, and it does seem that huge swathes of people are finding it impossible to navigate the technology put in place to point patients to the right professional. I am in my mid-50s. We were not taught computer skills at school. Everything I have learnt has been on the job, so to speak. I can only imagine how confusing and nonsensical trying to navigate the e-consult system must be for those in their late 80s, the very group that probably need help urgently and are least likely to make a fuss. Life and people are messy, unlike computers. People are unpredictable, individual, take time and patience. Computers and tick boxes make life much easier, but for whom and at what cost to humanity? If you don't use it, you lose it, is an old but true maxim.
If we don't keep communicating face to face with each other as humans, navigate rough patches, work out solutions, have our own toolkit to deal with relationships, whether they be professional, family or friend, without hiding behind keyboards and tick boxes, then we lose what it is to have humanity in a human world. When algorithms determine what represents a priority, then, Houston, we have a major attitude problem. The whole evolution of the human race has been a story of tribes, hamlets, villages and communities. That is how we function, based upon centuries of the human story. It occurs to me that the very innovations which are designed to help us communicate, to shop, to research, to learn, are the very innovations that are breaking down social fabric and the way we live. Brilliant as technology is, it doesn't have a heart. It is binary. It is yes or no. It is black or white. We as humans are infinite in our variety and don't fit very well into digital boxes. So let's remember to knock on our neighbour's door and check they're okay. Let's say hello to people. Let's embrace technology for how it can help, but never forget the touch, a smile and a hug mean more than any tap on a keyboard can. Merry Christmas, everyone.
And we move on. Understanding the Dark Sky Park campaign, written by Bryn Davis, chairman of Vectis Astronomical Society. The campaign on the island has been ongoing for over 5 years. It was in part inspired by the change to directed LED street lighting a few years previously. The campaign has involved the Campaign for the Protection of Rural England, the Vectis Astronomical Society, and the Isle of Wight Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty. There are obvious benefits to dark sky status in respect of stargazing and the potential for a wider offer to tourists, particularly in the winter months. But there are also much wider benefits. Wasted light is wasted energy and is therefore expensive. In addition to the economic benefits brought about by increased tourism, there are also significant savings to be made by following the principle that there should be enough light to illuminate only where it is needed and only when it is needed. This includes spotlights illuminating buildings at night spilling into the night sky, and security lights being on all night rather than when triggered by movement. Light pollution also disturbs birds and other nocturnal wildlife. Improved lighting will support and protect our populations of many species, including bats and many rare varieties of moth. While those involved in the campaign found that showed we had skies as dark as anywhere else, it was unfortunate that the original new LED lighting was too white and should have been a warmer colour. This led to the original submission for dark sky status being refused. The barrier to pursue dark sky status was therefore the cost of replacing the white street lighting. A number of proposals were considered, including reducing the size of the area for which accreditation was sought. There we were when COVID-19 struck and made it very difficult to proceed. Also, we had council elections in the May of 2021 and a new island council was in place. However, the new council has supported the proposal and quietly efforts were made to try to find the funding to make the changes with the support of Island Roads. This led to the article you may have seen in the county press in November describing this development. The issue is now coming before the council's cabinet and we now hope the necessary changes can be made possibly in the new year, and then work can go ahead to develop facilities within the Dark Sky Park to enable islanders and visitors to enjoy the pleasures of a truly dark sky illuminated by the millions of stars that fill it.
Superintendent Sarah Jackson, who's the district police commander for the island, says she'll have fond memories of the Isle of Wight as I head for a new role. It is with a heavy heart that I announce this will be my final column, as I am venturing off to exciting pastures new, taking up a secondment with the College of Policing as a leadership trainer. I will take with me not only my experience, but an array of incredibly fond memories of policing the Isle of Wight. I became a police officer in 1989, and becoming the island's district commander in 2015 has been one of my proudest achievements. To lead the incredibly dedicated police team here on the island, a place where I grew up, has been a huge privilege, but I know the job of keeping the island safe is in very capable hands. As we see the reintroduction of regulations on wearing face coverings in shops and on public transport, I wanted to reiterate that the police approach to these regulations will be very much the same as before, with a focus on engaging, explaining and encouraging people to play their part in limiting the spread of the virus and enforcing only where necessary and proportionate. We will also continue to respond to incidents where individuals are violent or abusive towards retail or transport staff or members of the public. Moving on to some positive policing updates. Police officers and staff, as well as members of the public, were awarded at a ceremony I hosted last month. It was so lovely to be able to do this in person. Recognised were incredible acts of bravery, courage and selfless commitment in the face of extreme adversity or danger. Their actions put public safety first before all else, and everyone who received an award should be extremely proud, as I am. The South Wight team held their first ever Policing and Community Day at the Bay C of E School, Sandown, on Saturday, November the 13th. It was a roaring success, with more than 700 people coming to meet with police and our partners, which is fantastic to see. The Isle of Wight investigation team has had recent success securing charges for a number of individuals in November. This includes 23-year-old Megan Durham, charged in relation to a serious assault in Shanklin involving a chisel, and 23-year-old Lacan Downs, who was charged following a racially aggravated assault on a man in Ryde. In addition, Simon Cant, 37, of Church Road in Wootton, was charged with drugs offences after police seized a quantity of pills during a stop check and following address searches. I wish everyone a very Merry Christmas.
Art exhibition takes over Sandown store. An art exhibition, influenced by the sea and the island, is set to take place in the former Ladies' Realm shop in Sandown. The exhibition will feature photography and colour wave reflections from local photographer Callum O'Connell, known as Alfie in the Air, and artist and photographer Andrew Conway Hyde of the Loft Studio. Andrew Conway Hyde is an abstract cum impressionist artist living on the island who discovered his love for art while serving in the British Army in Germany. Andrew's seascapes, skies and interpretations of the human psyche are captivating visions constructed through detailed works of colour and line. Callum O'Connell's hobby for photography led him to his dream job, taking photographs in a wide range of settings, from the landscapes of Wales and Cornwall, through the urban bustle of large cities, to the peaceful, unspoilt coastal areas around the south of England and the island. Callum is the director of Alfie in the Air in Union Street, Ryde. The exhibition runs from tomorrow, Saturday, to Friday, December 24th, from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m, Monday to Sunday.
And more What's On. Discover how life shapes the art of the glassmaker. Storytelling in Glass. The Isle of Wight Glass Museum's inaugural special event featured globally renowned glass artists Ian and Vic Bamforth, sharing their stories of how life's experience shapes their art. The audience thrilled to the spectacle of seeing the glass-making demonstration, assisted by Tim Harris, in the studio of Isle of Wight Studio Glass next door to the museum. The event programme was a first for us, which included a live stream via Zoom, said Museum Director Anton Dorozenko. We're delighted with the feedback we've received and will be posting video highlights online of the storyteller's art. The piece will be on display at the museum shortly and will feature as the centrepiece of the museum's International Year of Glass exhibition next year. Everyone tells us how they love to see the live glass-making demonstrations, said Sue Beebe, the museum's development manager. We've also lined up a super programme of events for 2022. The Isle of Wight Glass Museum at Arreton Barnes celebrates the design and craftsmanship of island glassmakers, as well as those in some way connected, past and present. There are more than 1,200 pieces on show in 2 galleries, and the next special event will be Pursuing a Passion for Glass on Sunday, February 13th in the morning. And that's also going to be live streamed via Zoom.
In brief, collision snapped lamppost in 2. A man from Cowes was arrested on suspicion of drink driving after crashing his car into a lamppost with such force it snapped in 2. Police and paramedics were called to the racecourse roundabout near Whippingham at 4:07 a.m. on Saturday, following a report of a single vehicle collision involving a Fiat Punto. The car ended up on its roof, and the lamppost the Punto collided with snapped in 2, a Hampshire constabulary spokesman said. The 19-year-old driver, arrested on suspicion of drink driving and without a licence, was taken to St Mary's Hospital, Newport, then was arrested. The accident caused traffic disruption while debris was cleared off the road and the vehicle was recovered.
There was an electrical pole fire. 2 fire crews from Newport Fire Station attended the scene of a smoking electrical pole on Fairley Road on Monday afternoon. A spokesperson from Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service just said it was a small fire at the base of the pole, but directly outside Medina College.
Boris urged a call halt to 60 years of financial hurt. Will the Prime Minister help me right the wrong of 6 decades? That was the question Isle of Wight MP Bob Seeley asked Boris Johnson at Prime Minister's Questions in Parliament on Wednesday, while seeking an update on the Islander deal. In a written question, Mr Seeley asked the Prime Minister what recent progress has been made on bringing forward proposals for an island deal for the Isle of Wight, and will he make a statement? Mr Johnson said there were ongoing discussions about levelling up and a county deal. Mr Seeley replied, will the government accept the findings of the independent study if commissioned into a long-term fair funding settlement for the island, the final calculations of which are due imminently, and in doing so help me right a wrong which has been ongoing for my constituents for the last 6 decades. Mr Johnson said he will understand it is not easy to break down the costs that apply to the service delivery on the island. I know the department is carefully considering the details of the study he mentions, and I'm sure the relevant minister will keep him updated. The Isle of Wight Council confirmed it had submitted the independent study findings to Whitehall in September. After the session, Mr Seeley said, "Today I reminded the Prime Minister of the need for a better deal for the Isle of Wight as part of my ongoing campaign. I'm pleased that the Prime Minister acknowledges our unique circumstances and I will continue my talks with the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities about the findings of the study commissioned by the government. The Prime Minister knows because I have told him this deal is important to the island. I'm pleased to say that in many areas we are already getting a better deal. We have already secured millions for our railway, we have capital investment in our hospital, and we have money to secure jobs and upgrade the public realm in East Cowes, but there is always more to do. We need a better deal for our public services, which includes both our council and our uniquely small hospital. Isle of Wight Councillor Carl Love, Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, said, "While it's good news that a question has been asked, the response was still very woolly. We heard the same spin prior to the general election, and we're still waiting and struggling to stay afloat. We need this funding now, not later."
Alan Marriott says mask up on ferries to keep people safe. A heartfelt plea for ferry passengers to be more considerate about wearing masks has been issued by two island councillors. Councillor Richard Quigley of Cowes North and Councillor Ian Daw of Binstead and Fishbourne both have ferry routes in their wards and are concerned for the more vulnerable passengers and for crew members on the routes. Councillor Quigley said both of them are fathers of vulnerable children and want people to act more responsibly. He said our constituents have an almost endless list of issues with the ferries. One issue that is consistent and comes up a lot is for those travelling for medical appointments or on their way to visit vulnerable relatives, or in my case, the father of a child with a reduced immune system, is the issue of wearing masks. Councillor Daw added, over the last 8 weeks, I've had to travel to the mainland on all ferry routes for various medical-based appointments, some my own, some for family members. There are other people like me, going to medical appointments, who are clearly troubled with the lack of mask wearing. On a recent crossing from Portsmouth to Fishbourne, a head count on the upper lounge showed 44 people, of whom 6 had masks on. Harbour Travel appear to be leading the pack on this and are exemplary. To the credit of the captain on the Yarmouth to Lymington route, he reiterated the message constantly. He said on Red Funnel he saw an almost full lounge and only 7 wearing masks. He said this resulted in me having a robust conversation with the captain, trying to ensure my young and vulnerable daughter's safety. Many local residents and islanders that air their views on social media feel that the ferries are our weakest link in the fight to keep the island operating as normally as it can. Add in the inevitable visitors from various parts of the country coming to reside on the island for Christmas, and you can see it has the potential for a very difficult few weeks, not least for the NHS. Councillor Quigley said, there is still a requirement to isolate for 10 days if you have COVID-19. This means ferry staff who test positive will no longer be available for work. My inbox is full of complaints about ferry reliability, so if we can minimise further disruption by wearing a mask, then we owe it to those that need to get to the mainland for hospital appointments. Councillor Daw called on the ferry companies to invest in outsourced staff, helping to ensure masks are worn. He said this would take the pressure off the hard-working crew who should not be exposed to such tasks. We as passengers also have it in our gift to demonstrate compassion. It is the most rudimentary human trait we have to offer, and it costs nothing.
The hourly train service gets set to stay for now. This is written by Laurie Little of the County Press. Hopes the Island Line trains may soon switch to a half-hourly service have been dashed once again. The National Rail website is currently taking bookings ahead, and there are only hourly trains listed right through to early April. Although South Western Railway told the County Press a month ago there were plans to bring in a half-hourly service until the spring, the website confirmation of available timing has scotched rumours of a forthcoming half-hourly service. Commuter Tyler Bernard of Shanklin said, "Good to know a £26 million spend can result in a worse service. Lots of people were speculating that it wouldn't happen, and we wouldn't get a half-hour, and we would get a half-hour service soon, but this update will crush their hopes, especially in light of the restricted ferry timetable for the pierhead. It means there is no guarantee fast cat connection. Passengers can easily get stuck for an hour at the pierhead if either service is even a few minutes late. I have to go to London on business, which now means a hotel stay if the last train you can get from London and be sure of getting home is before 5 p.m. It seems while everywhere else is improving public transport and cutting back on car use for environmental reasons, it's becoming essential to buy a car if you live on the island. Last month, the county press reported that on social media it was being claimed a document showed the service resuming half-hourly from December the 12th. At that time, South Western Railway said no date had been set and the hourly service would remain in place until spring. A spokesperson said, "As things stand at the moment, the train per hour is amply meeting demand." Island line closed to passengers in January and in November started running again.
A historic sea lane in Yarmouth has been returned to the town after a 4-year wait. The 35-metre-long Friars Lane off the High Street had public access blocked temporarily after works at a property next to the lane restricted access to the path. Speaking at the Isle of Wight Council Appeals Subcommittee meeting last week, Yarmouth Town Councillor Rodney Corped said the 5 sea lanes had historically been guarded by the men of the town, but one sea lane, called Love Lane, had already been lost. He said the town's sea lanes were very dear to the heart of the people of Yarmouth, and in the past, when attempts had been made to privatise them, gates were beaten down, and another went to the magistrates' court. All lanes do not have ownership. As such, we believe they belong to the town, to us, which is why it is difficult to find who owns the land, Councillor Corbett said. We believe we have ownership forever. Darryl Clark, Isle of Wight Council Rights of Way manager, said the authority had fully investigated the evidence, contacted witnesses and landowners, and a way over land was considered to exist. Mr Clark advised the subcommittee there was sufficient evidence of public use in a 20-year period and there has been no interruption to that use. Councillor Jeff Brodie, Chair, said there was an overwhelming case to make an order, and with all the evidence provided it was a cut and dry case. No one was present to speak against the application.
Robin Hill Falconry set to spread its wings with new aviaries. A bigger and better falconry attraction is coming to one of the island's tourist hotspots, as long as it gets a new zoo licence. In an application to the Isle of Wight Council, details have been unveiled for an expanded birds of prey display at Robin Hill, reflecting the island's white-tailed eagles reintroduction scheme. Currently, falconry displays take place at the park on the outskirts of Newport, but now 28 aviaries are being built to house a range of birds. Robin Hill has told the council it wants to display 3 types of falcon, plus a vulture, buzzard, 2 types of hawk, a kookaburra, and a white-tailed eagle. Designed with maximum freedom, the aviaries will keep the birds individually and can effectively quarantine them when necessary. In licensing documents, the company says it has not ruled out breeding the birds, subject to finding suitable partners. Vectis Ventures has confirmed a falconry centre is under development in the park, which requires a zoo licence. Each bird will have a training programme to keep them fit and healthy. The birds will be leased to Robin Hill, except for the white-tailed eagle, which is owned by Ventures. Comments on the application 210107 Zoo News from consultants will close on December the 20th.
A brownie pack marks a century of good deeds in Queen Victoria's favourite town. The East Cowes Brownies are celebrating 100 years of lending a hand to others. In December 1921, a brownie pack was formed in East Cowes. This pack, now called a unit, has been meeting in the town ever since. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, both brownies and guides flourished in East Cowes. They were led by our Mrs. McGill, who was the District Commissioner for North Wight. By 1935, it was one of a few girl guiding areas in the whole United Kingdom to receive a grant from the King George IV Jubilee Fund. This grant, for the grand sum of £50, enabled the guides and brownies to build a headquarters, which was duly opened by Sir Percy Everett, who was Deputy Chief Scout of the Boy Scouts Association. There have been a number of leaders over the years, notably Mrs. King, who ran the pack from June 1948 until October 1965. She had several assistants during that time. In October 1965, a Mrs. J. Jones took over as leader, and she was followed by a Mrs. A. Atkin in 1972 and Eileen Adset in 1977. The current leader, Katie Charlton, has been with the unit for more than 10 years. It was Katie, the brown owl, who organised a get-together and celebration of the 100 years with assistant leader Marion O'Nions. Joining in the celebrations was Island Commissioner Linda Stone, and everyone enjoyed looking back over the 100 years with activities and games. One activity involved the present brownies trying to match old badges with the new badges from the latest girl guiding programme. There was also a discussion as to which brownie uniform had been the most fashionable over the years, including the one designed by fashion designer Jeff Banks. Games and activities were followed by all enjoying a celebratory cake made by Brown Owl's sister, who runs the Newport-based cake makers Tiffin in a Tin. This cake, complete with the brownie badge, was cut by the youngest brownie, Hannah, aged 7, and the oldest brownie, Abby, aged 10. The group welcomes new members, and there are units of girl guiding based in most Isle of Wight areas as well.
Cattle moving in at quarries. Native cattle are being reintroduced at 2 former quarry sites on the Isle of Wight as part of a new rewilding project to create richer habitats for wildlife. A small herd of Aberdeen Angus cattle are now grazing at St George's Down near Newport, and from spring 2022, Hereford crosses will arrive at Prospect Quarry near Shalcombe. The cows will help maintain species-rich habitats by controlling the growth of more aggressive plants that would otherwise take over. Both sites are environmentally important locations, with St George's Down designated a site of importance for nature conservation, SINC, and Prospect Quarry, a site of special scientific interest, SSSI. The rewilding programme is being run by Wight Building Materials in partnership with Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust and Natural England. The introduction of native cattle provides a natural way of controlling scrub while also helping to create a habitat for insects and small mammals through the way the animals use their tongues to lift tufts of grass rather than grazing close to the ground. Deborah Whitfield, Senior Nature-Based Solutions Manager at HIWWT, said, "We are so pleased to see grazing returning to these sites. The native cows will help manage the scrub and create more open areas, benefiting wildlife such as wildflowers, bees, butterflies, and basking reptiles. Large herbivores such as cattle shape and drive natural processes and are key to creating wilder areas where nature can thrive. Mark Larter from Natural England said, "Prospect Quarry is a little known but nationally important site and supports one of the few remaining tiny fragments of limestone grassland left on the island." Steve Burton, General Manager at Wight Building Materials, said, "Our work does not simply stop when a quarry closes. We take our responsibility of restoring and enhancing the land we use very seriously."
Now, the tale of a seasonal beauty and a beast. This week, a beauty and a beast of a problem are highlighted by gardener Paul Dyer. First, the seasonal beauty, the Christmas cactus. Perfect to think of at this time of year because they make an excellent eye-catching present. Mine is a lovely snow white, but the trumpet-shaped flowers appearing between mid-November to January also come in pink, red, purple and yellow. Christmas cacti, Latin Schlumbergera, have flat, segmented and trailing stems which look quite attractive all year. They are native to tropical rainforests where they grow in niches on trees. Here they need to be kept away from bright sunlight and like plenty of humidity, so mist them a couple of times a week and keep them away from radiators which dry them. Christmas cacti will flower every year given the right care, which means remember they need 2 periods of rest in a cool room with less water, once after flowering and again in autumn. Given that care, they are long-lasting, so much so that they're often passed down through the generations. Next, the beast, the beastly peach leaf curl, which has been an especially persistent problem after the copper-based Bordeaux mixture was banned. Some believe in regular watering of the base of trees with dilute Epsom salts. Others point to disease-resistant species, which would help. Others, like our chum, Paul Bailey, are just lucky, I guess. His peach yields are massively impressive, even though he doesn't especially like peaches. A preventive measure, which works, is to construct an open-ended, lean-to polythene tent over fence or wall train trees, which prevents the rain-borne fungus getting an infectious foothold. There's only one non-copper fungicide spray currently available to help manage peach leaf curl for home growers. It does not work after symptoms of the peach leaf curl appear in the spring, so it is important to apply it during the winter. This leaf curl affects not only peaches and nectarines, but apricot and almond trees as well as the decorative prunus. Airborne spores land on buds to infest newly emerging leaves in spring. The fungus feeds on the young leaves and affects their development, so they become red and distorted. It weakens trees, making the flowers and fruit fall off. In the wake of the Bordeaux ban, a wily Paul Dyer has come up with another copper-based solution. I managed to cure the leaf curl I had. I sprayed the tree with a Vitax copper-based solution, then painted the trunk with fruit tree grease about 6 inches above the soil and about 4 inches wide. I did this in late October and sprayed again early spring, just as the new buds appeared. Now, this Vitax copper mixture is a micronutrient mixture designed to protect edible crops from trace element deficiencies, not specifically disease. There's a blend of 3 vital trace elements. It protects plants from copper, manganese and zinc deficiency. It's designed to be applied as a leaf spray and can protect potatoes, beans and peas, beet, brassicas, carrots, celery, fruit and onions. But it's such a great help with the peach curl. It's interesting to follow.
Operation Holly is launched. Hampshire Constabulary has launched its annual drink and drug driving campaign known as Operation Holly. The campaign runs until January 1st, 2022, combining educational and enforcement activity in the run-up to Christmas and New Year to tackle drink and drug driving. Sergeant Dave Haslett said every year we run Operation Holly, and every year we find that people still take to the road, having drunk too much or having taken drugs that will impair their driving. It is important to plan how you're going to get home after a Christmas party or a night out. Think carefully about the morning after. It's highly likely you will still be over the limit the next morning. If you know of anyone who is drink or drug driving, call 999 in an emergency, 101 with information, or report via Crime Stoppers.
Ready? That is the end of this week's reading of the Talking News, so it's goodbye from Kate.
And goodbye from Sonara.
There is no scaffolding news this week. The In Touch programme follows. Accessibility at further education colleges and guide dog retirement age. All further education colleges are legally obliged to develop accessible websites, learning, teaching and assessment materials to students who need them. But new research suggests that 8 out of 10 colleges in the UK are not doing this. The research was conducted by disability consultancy company All Able on behalf of Thomas Pocklington Trust. It tested the pathways blind and partially sighted students may use to find out about support a college may provide. On this, we speak to co-director of All Able, George Rhodes. A college student shares her experiences with access to specialist technology and information during her course, and we ask David Hughes, the chief director of the Association of Colleges, about what they're doing to change this inaccessible culture across some of the UK's colleges. When we heard from Valerie Brown about her concerns over the retirement age of her current guide dog Jack, we thought we'd get her some clarification. We invited Valerie to put this concern, along with others she had, to Peter Osborne, who is the Director of Operations for Guide Dogs.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Are the rules about retiring guide dogs too rigid, especially with waiting lists as long as they are? An owner puts her concerns direct to the organisation.
It was very emphatic to say that Jack is 10 and a half, he will retire. If he is withdrawn, then I shall in effect be housebound or reliant on taxis. It's very convoluted.
But first, earlier this year, we talked about some of the access problems faced by many visually impaired students at university. But now new research commissioned by the Thomas Pocklington Trust suggests that problems at further education colleges are just as bad, if not worse. Disability consultancy company All Able carried out the research, and they say that many visually impaired students attending FE colleges are finding it hard to access disability information on their college's websites. They're struggling to get equipment at the beginning of their courses or get exam papers in a format that they can actually read. As a result, they're falling behind or even giving up altogether. George Rhodes is one of the directors at All Able and he joins us. George, first of all, tell me about your key findings.
We looked at legally required information that colleges are expected to provide about their public-facing websites and about important application information such as prospectuses. We note that colleges, in comparison to many other areas of the public sector, are falling significantly behind after 3 years of the related regulations being in effect. We've noticed that communication channels for students who reach out to colleges to want to know about the accessibility of their front-facing and internal platforms and many learning resources aren't as robust as they should be. Around 21.4% of those colleges contacted by a disabled student who works with us, asking very basic questions about the accessibility of their main virtual learning environment, which would be a platform that most students would interact with on a daily basis. And 21.4% of colleges gave no response whatsoever to this prospective student, however, would respond to a similar request that made no mention of disability in the initial email.
And what conclusions do you draw from that?
It's an area we need to dig into much further with the colleges. We've spoken to many members of staff from different colleges after we received these results and have found that this is a relatively known problem, and some of it may be attributed to a lack of communication between front-facing marketing teams and the additional learning support teams. There are a variety of factors that could be affecting why this is happening.
But what you're basically saying is that students are finding it difficult to get the information they need to make the decisions about where they go, what courses they go on, how accessible they're going to be.
That's correct, yes.
Let me turn to Alex. Alex Ulysses is in her final year of a sport and exercise course at Bromley College in South East London. Alex, you had problems when you first started your course. Just explain what they were.
So it's just mainly with the technology. Basically, I started off the year with my Android tablet device, which I had previously in my secondary school, that had an app called VNC. It connects to my teacher's computer so I can see everything that's being shown on the interactive whiteboard that all my peers can see. And that took quite a while to set up. I'm not sure why, I guess because the college as a mainstream don't really use that much technology with visually impaired. It put me quite behind in my lessons. I did have an LSA who was really good and I've still got her. She had to write down notes for me or literally describe to me what was on the board as I couldn't see it. Even if I sit like about a metre or two away, I still can't see it. So that was a bit of a struggle.
And what about your exams? What about accessible exams?
So I have 2 exams next month. Kind of afraid and nervous about them because I don't really want last year to happen again. Because last year it turned out that they didn't receive the enlarged paper that had been ordered from the college. I think there's people, like sighted people out there, who think, okay, if we enlarge the paper size, it'll increase the font size, which it kind of does, but for me, it still looked tiny. And I had to sit in that exam, stressing about if I'm going to get it done and struggling to read the print because it was so tiny. It was just really straining and stuff, and it made me overwhelmed.
And do you know why this happened?
I honestly don't know how or why they didn't get the exam. I think it was to do with either it not arriving on time or they just got the paper or they lost it.
OK. We have in fact talked to Alex's college. They told us,
as part of our commitment to inclusivity, we are in the process of implementing the accessibility function into our website. We are very disappointed and surprised to hear that this visually impaired learner feels unsatisfied with the support that she received in relation to accessibility. Before she joined the college, we met with her and her specialist visual impairment advisor, and she had a strong desire to join a mainstream setting rather than a specialist provision. Our team will continue to work with this student, and we are very committed to dealing with any issues that may be concerning her. We are confident that she will achieve very well on her course.
And they went on to acknowledge, Alex, that you experienced lack of access to technology when you started, and you repeatedly had to battle with inaccessible learning materials throughout your course. But they say they did offer one-to-one support and were advocates for your needs. Could they have done any more?
I don't think they could have done any more, to be honest. I just think a bit more communication, and even if the exams come in late, they should either inform me or my tutors. So then I could either get an extension and change the date of my exam, do it a day later or something.
George Rhodes, I mean, it sounds like there are a lot of problems in addition to what the college does in these kind of situations.
There are, yes. And what we've just heard is very reminiscent of other stories from students that we've worked with, where we've seen that one-to-one support and the support of additional learning support teams is primarily used to paper over the cracks, as it were, for a less accessible by design approach from colleges.
Well, listening to all of that is David Hughes. David is the Chief Director of the Association of Colleges. They represent further education colleges in the UK. David, what's your reaction to what you've heard?
Fundamentally, I'm just very disappointed at how Alex has had to kind of fight, really, and it shouldn't be like that. We were really surprised by the report and very disappointed and want to see some action to put it right. And as George has said, there are some simple things colleges can do to make things better in the short term. And there are some things that we just need to get in terms of the culture shift in colleges, I think. But fundamentally, in the end, the colleges tend to do the right thing, but they do it in a very clunky way sometimes. They do it with learning support staff, which is not very efficient, not as effective.
I mean, does that mean it should actually be part of the training? That teachers, who I'm quite sure have got lots of things to deal with, but they actually get some training in their basic training about disability needs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there are lots of issues. Teacher training has got to have proper embedded inclusion in it. And I think that's a big issue. There's a lot of issues around transitions for young people coming from schools and sometimes specialist schools into colleges that need to be addressed. There's a big issue around funding support for qualified teachers of the visually impaired to advise and support colleges to get this right. One of the most shocking parts of the research, I think, was people ringing up who have a visual impairment just not being dealt with properly and fairly. And that's just not on, is it? We've got to get better at it as a sector.
It also seems clear that, a large number of colleges are just not complying with some aspects of the accessibility laws, which George described at the beginning. Surely that's the minimum we should expect, isn't it?
Absolutely. We're determined to get it right. We've put into our briefings, as soon as we saw this, information to college leaders. We've done a webinar already. We've got a webinar we're planning for January with college leaders, with the Thomas Pupkinson Trust and George from All Able, because what we've got to do is we've got to make sure the leaders understand what their legal requirements are, and even more importantly, in a sense, how they can put it right.
David Hughes, Alex and George, thank you all very much indeed. And we stay on education and the issue of financial support. When you apply for some further or higher education courses, you can also apply for a government grant, the Disabled Students Allowance, or DSA. It's designed primarily for higher education to cover any extra costs that you have, such as assistive technology. But over the years, this programme has heard many complaints about its efficiency. Well, now Life peer Lord Holmes, who I'm sure was once a visually impaired student himself, has secured a short debate on the DSA in the House of Lords for later this week. Lord Holmes, why does it need a review?
I think it's time to review the whole scheme, in honesty, Peter. There are issues around the application process, the accessibility of the application process, the timeliness of that support, and indeed, as you heard from your piece there, the technology needs to be accessible. So there's a role for the scheme to play. The government needs to ensure that it is optimally supporting disabled students, but there's a role for the colleges and universities, there's a role for the technology providers, web developers, for everybody. And as came out of that report, if everything is predicated inclusive by design, we do tend to solve most of the problems, but we've got a long way to go on that journey yet.
And I think you want to hear from people who are actually in this situation at the moment. Briefly, what do you want people to do?
Very much so. If you're a visually impaired or blind student or recent student, please do be in touch. LordChrisHolmes.com, same Twitter handle.
Chris Holmes, Lord Holmes, thank you very much indeed. And we'll be reporting on the outcome of that debate on next week's programme. Now, another perennial subject of discussion on In Touch has been the length of waiting times to have a new guide dog when your old faithful has to hang up the harness and retire. A problem which, like so many things, we're told has been exacerbated by COVID. But guide dog owner Valerie Brown contacted us not only to make that point, but also to make a suggestion about how the situation could be improved. Valerie joins us. Can you just explain your current situation with your guide dog, Jack?
I've had Jack since 2013 and he passed 10 in October. And under current guide dog policies, he will retire when he's 10 and a half. They naturally offer long cane training, and long cane has never suited me. So if he is withdrawn at 10 and a half, as per the current information, then I shall in effect be housebound or reliant on taxis. My concern is that the waiting time now is, we're told, possibly up to 2 years. And I'm querying really why the retirement age has been made so rigid in view of the shortage of dogs and the effects of COVID.
And you've already started the process, I've
started the process, just it's very convoluted now compared with the early days. It seems to be a 5-stage process.
When you say a 5-stage process, I don't think I want you to list all 5, but give me an impression of what it feels like.
Well, the only time I've ever physically had a form filled in with me is when I applied for my first guide dog in 1964. Every other dog I've had, the application process and behind the scenes have been done seamlessly by the local training centre. But of course now we have no local training centres as such. Obviously there's had to be a rethink for the application process.
So it's convoluted.
It is very, very convoluted.
OK.
And scary.
OK, well, let me say, listening to that is Pete Osborne, who is Director of Operations at Guide Dogs. Peter, can I ask you first of all about this whole business of the retirement age? Valerie says, why does it have to be so rigid? Dogs vary in their ability to how long they can go on, and because there is a waiting list problem, wouldn't it be as well to keep the ones who are able to going as long as possible?
Absolutely. And to stress, there is no retirement age for a guide dog. Very much like us as people, we can continue for as long as it makes sense or as long as we're able to. And that's the case for guide dogs as well. We have a number of guide dogs that are working substantially longer than 10 or even 10 and a half. So if you've been given that impression, then that's absolutely not the case. So it's very much an individual situation that we look at. So there's no retirement age whatsoever.
But what is that thing about 10 and a half? And that's a very precise figure. I mean, Valerie hasn't imagined that.
Oh, no. No, I mean, this was being given to me by the local instructors, and I've spoken to other guide dog owners, and it seems to be a general thing.
Can I just say, before we bring Pete back in, we have actually heard from Chris Ferguson, who's from the Newcastle area. His dog would have been due for retirement in September under this rule, except that Pete says it's not a rule, and Chris seems to confirm that. He says his dog Quinter still thinks and acts like a much younger dog, and they still walk faster than anyone else in the town. And he says his local guide dog office in Newcastle have allowed them to keep their successful partnership going and will review every 3 months. So, I mean, there seems to be confusion here about what's going on.
Yeah, there should be no confusion. There is no national rule on this particular issue. There's no rule on this issue. What we do is make sure that we talk to guide dog owners about the situation that they're in themselves on a regular basis, usually every 3 to 6 months. We also ask guide dog owners to take their dogs to the vets more regularly, because as dogs get older, they slow down. It could be that they're not as willing or as happy to work going forward.
So perhaps, Valerie, you should talk to whoever.
I will, because it was very, very emphatic from the local area to say that Jack is 10 and a half in April, he will retire, and they've even started talking about his future.
Well, you mean rehoming?
Yeah.
Just to avoid that just for a moment, because I think the other point that Valerie has been making is it's now very rigid, very bureaucratic, she feels, that in the past, you were known. I think that's Valerie's real point. They knew who you were, they knew what your capabilities were. Now it seems it's one form after another.
You're a number.
What we're trying to do through this process is make sure that we gather as much information about how people's circumstances may have changed. So if I take myself as an example, I may have moved house, which I have. I may have changed job, which I have. during the time at which I've been working with my guide dog, Nile. So these things change for us all of the time, and that's the case for everybody. However, I think what we have done more recently is brought in a process where we've had a range of conversations with people, and I do think this has got probably too complex for returning guide dog applicants, people who have actually had previous dogs. And we are looking to simplify that, you'll be relieved to know. In the new year, we're going to move to a much simpler process whereby we move to a mobility and a guide dog assessment so that we can actually process those applications much more rapidly.
And can I just ask you, how long is the waiting list at the moment?
We have a waiting list of about 18 months on average. Averages are very dangerous things because some people receive a dog far faster than that. And for some people, that will take longer depending on their situation and the type of dog that they need and the circumstance that they're working in. But we're aiming to reduce that as fast as we possibly can. We are increasing the number of dogs that we have in training. We have more than 900 puppies now with our wonderful volunteers. And if anybody is really keen to take on that really exciting role, we're desperate for more puppy raisers, so please let us know. So we're looking to increase the number of dogs in training as we go forward so that we can move towards that target of creating at least 1,000 partnerships a year.
But 18 months is a very long time to have to wait, especially if you're worried that your dog will be retired. I mean, can you give an assurance that somebody won't be left without a dog if their dog is still fit, happy, willing to do the job?
What I can say is if your dog is able to work and happy to work and the situation is working for you, then your dog can continue to work.
Valerie?
That is really reassuring, Peter, and I wish it could be communicated locally.
It is a major challenge for people, I know, and we need to approach each situation on its own merit. But what's really important is it's the right retirement age for the partnership, and that's something we should be discussing with everybody as individual cases.
Pete Osborne of Guide Dogs, Valerie Brown, thank you both very much indeed. And that's it for today. As always, we welcome your comments on anything you've heard in the programme. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk, leave a voicemail on 0161 836 1338. From me, Peter Wight, producer Beth Hemmings and studio managers Owain Williams and Philip Halliwell, goodbye.